The smell hit him first. Rich, savory, impossible. Tommy stood frozen in the doorway of the ranch house, his thin fingers gripping the frame until his knuckles turned white. Before him, on a heavy wooden table that looked older than the town itself, sat a plate of food that seemed to glow in the lamplight. Thick cuts of steak, still steaming, their edges caramelized to perfection. Golden cornbread, butter melting into its crumbling surface. Green beans that looked like they'd been picked that very morning. He had to be dreaming, or dead. Maybe that fever from sleeping behind the saloon last week had finally taken him. Well, boy, you gonna stand there gawking, or you gonna sit down and eat? The rancher's voice was gruff but not unkind. Samuel Thornton was a mountain of a man, with hands like dinner plates and a beard that had gone silver years ago. He gestured to the chair with a wave that suggested this was somehow normal, somehow ordinary. Tommy's stomach answered before his mouth could, growling so loud that even the rancher's wife, Martha, smiled from where she stood by the stove. She was a round woman with kind eyes and flour perpetually dusting her apron. "Sit, child. Lord knows you need it more than the buzzards need another carcass to pick at." The boy moved slowly, as if the chair might vanish if he approached too quickly. He'd been on the streets of Dustridge for 3 months now, ever since the fever took his ma. 3 months of scraps, of fighting dogs for bones, of stealing apples when old man Henderson wasn't looking. 3 months of invisible hunger that gnawed at his insides like a living thing. He sat. The chair didn't disappear. Neither did the food. "Go on," Samuel said, settling into his own seat across the table. His plate was identical to Tommy's, which somehow made it even more unbelievable. Rich folk didn't share their food with street urchins. They threw it away first. Tommy picked up the fork. His hands were shaking. The first bite of steak touched his tongue, and his eyes instantly filled with tears. It was real. It was warm. It was more delicious than anything he remembered, even from before. When Ma was alive, and they had their little room above the seamstress shop, found him trying to fix the fence down by the south pasture, Samuel said to his wife, speaking as casually as if he'd found a dropped coin. Doing a pretty fair job of it, too. Asked him if he wanted to earn supper. Figured he'd run off. Instead, he stayed till sundown and finished the whole stretch. Martha nodded, ladling something that smelled like heaven into a bowl. "We've been needing help since Jacob moved to California. Ranch is too much for just the 2 of us now." Tommy swallowed, the cornbread sticking slightly in his throat. This was it. This was where they'd tell him 1 meal was all he'd get. 1 taste of heaven before being sent back to hell. "How old are you, boy?" Samuel asked. 12, sir." His voice came out smaller than he intended. "Almost 13. You got people?" Tommy shook his head. The steak suddenly felt heavy in his stomach. "No, sir. Not anymore." Samuel and Martha exchanged a look, one of those married people looks that said 1,000 words without sound. The boy had seen his parents do the same back when the world made sense. "You know anything about ranching?" Samuel continued. "No, sir. But I can learn. I'm quick and I don't complain, and I can work sunrise to sunset, I promise." The words tumbled out desperately. He'd sleep in the barn. He'd eat scraps. Anything was better than the streets. "Eat your supper, Tommy," Martha said gently, setting the bowl of what turned out to be potato soup beside his plate. "We can talk about tomorrow when tomorrow comes," but Tommy could see it in their eyes. He could feel it in the way they didn't rush him, didn't watch him like he might steal the silverware. Something had shifted. Something had changed in the moment Samuel Thornton had found a scrawny orphan boy trying to mend a fence he had no business touching. He ate slowly, trying to make it last, trying to memorize every flavor. Outside, the Texas sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Through the window, he could see the vast expanse of the Thornton Ranch stretching toward the horizon. Cattle dotted the landscape like dark clouds. The land rolled and dipped, endless and free. For the first time in 3 months, Tommy felt something strange and fragile bloom in his chest. It felt dangerous to name it. Felt like tempting fate. But it was there nonetheless, small and persistent as a desert flower pushing through cracked earth. It felt like hope. The rooster's crow came too early, and not early enough. Tommy had barely slept. lying in the small room off the kitchen that Martha had prepared for him. A real bed, with sheets, and a pillow that didn't smell like horse manure or whiskey. He'd spent half the night just touching the walls, making sure they were solid, making sure this wasn't some cruel dream conjured by a starving mind. When he emerged into the kitchen, the sky was still more black than blue. Samuel was already there, coffee in hand, looking like a man who'd been awake for hours. "Morning," the rancher said. "You ready to work?" "Yes, sir." Tommy had slept in his clothes, the only clothes he owned. They were too small, too threadbare, but they were his. Martha appeared from somewhere, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd run a household for decades. She pressed a bundle into Tommy's arms. Clothes, new clothes. Sturdy pants, 2 shirts, a leather vest that smelled rich and earthy. "Can't have you working in rags," she said simply. "These were Jacob's when he was your age. They'll do till we can get to town." Tommy couldn't speak. He just nodded, clutching the bundle like it might evaporate. The work was hard. Harder than anything Tommy had ever done. Samuel showed him how to feed the horses, how to muck the stalls, how to check the water troughs and mend the ones that leaked. His hands, already rough from street life, developed new calluses. His back ached. His legs trembled. But every time he wanted to stop, every time his body screamed for rest, he remembered the steak, the cornbread, the small room with the real bed. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible. And he worked harder. "You're pushing yourself too much," Samuel said around noon, finding Tommy trying to move a bale of hay that probably weighed more than he did. "Take a break. Drink some water." "I'm fine, sir." That wasn't a suggestion. The rancher's voice carried that particular tone that meant arguing was pointless. He handed Tommy a canteen and sat down on a fence rail, gesturing for the boy to do the same. "Let me tell you something, son. A good ranch hand knows his limits, knows when to push and when to rest. Dead men don't fix fences." Tommy drank. The water was cool, clean, perfect. "I just want to earn my keep, sir." "You already did. Last night when you stayed to finish that fence instead of running off." Samuel pulled out a piece of jerky, broke it in half, and offered one piece to Tommy. "Martha and we've been thinking. Ranch needs help. You need a place. Seems like maybe God's got a sense of humor about these things." The boy's heart started hammering. "Sir, we'd like you to stay properly, not as some hired hand we pay in scraps. As part of this place." Samuel looked out over his land, squinting against the sun. "Can't promise it'll be easy. Ranch life never is. But you'll have a bed, food, and honest work. You'll go to school when the season allows. And if you prove yourself, well, maybe someday you'll have more than that." Tommy felt his eyes burning again. Twice in 2 days. He was turning into a watering pot. "I won't let you down, Mr. Thornton, I swear it." "I know you won't." Samuel stood, groaning slightly as his knees popped. "Now finish that water and let's get back to it. Cattle need checking before supper." The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Tommy learned the names of the horses. Thunder, Bess, Copper, and Old Joe, who was anything but old. He learned which cattle were troublemakers and which were docile. He learned the boundaries of the property, the places where the land belonged to the Thorntons and where it belonged to the neighbors or to nobody at all. As the sun began its descent, painting everything in shades of amber and gold, Tommy stood on a small rise and looked back at the ranch house. Smoke curled from the chimney. Lights glowed in the windows. It looked like something from a storybook, something too good to be real, but it was real. The ache in his muscles was real. The dirt under his fingernails was real. The sense of belonging, fragile and new, was real. Samuel came up beside him, moving quietly for such a large man. "Not bad for a first day. Thank you, sir, for everything. Thank me by showing up tomorrow." And the day after that, and all the days that follow, Samuel clapped a heavy hand on Tommy's shoulder. "Welcome to the Thornton Ranch, son." That night, supper was beef stew with vegetables and bread so fresh it steamed when Martha cut into it. Tommy ate with purpose but not desperation. There would be breakfast tomorrow, and lunch, and dinner. There would be tomorrow. If you're enjoying Tommy's journey from the streets to the ranch, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We've got more stories of hope, struggle, and triumph coming your way. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. 3 weeks passed like water through fingers. Tommy fell into the rhythm of ranch life with surprising ease. Wake before dawn, feed the animals, mend whatever broke yesterday. Learn something new from Samuel. Eat Martha's cooking. Sleep in the small room that increasingly felt like his. Repeat, but contentment made him nervous. Good things didn't last. They never had before. The trouble started on a Tuesday. Tommy was in town with Samuel, helping load supplies into the wagon. That's when he saw them, 3 boys from his street days, the ones who'd controlled the best scraps, the best sleeping spots. They looked the same, hungry, mean, calculating. Their leader was a kid named Rake, 15 going on 40, with eyes that had never been young. He spotted Tommy immediately. "Well, well!" Little Tommy got himself cleaned up. Rake's voice carried across the street. People turned to look. Playing cowboy now? Tommy felt his face flush. Samuel was inside the general store paying for nails. The old Tommy would have run. The new Tommy didn't know what to do. "Heard you're living up at the Thornton place," Rake continued, moving closer. His friends flanked him like wolves. "Must be nice. Sleeping in a real bed, eating real food, while the rest of us scramble for scraps." "I work for it," Tommy said quietly. "I work hard." "Oh, you work for it." Rake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You always were good at kissing up to rich folks. What did you do? Cry them a sad story? Show them your big, pathetic eyes?" Something hot flared in Tommy's chest. "It's not like that." "Sure it isn't. You're special. Different from the rest of us." "That it?" Rake was close now. Close enough that Tommy could smell the familiar scent of unwashed clothes and desperation. "Tell you what's really happening. They're using you, getting cheap labor out of some orphan brat who's so grateful for scraps, he'll work himself to death. And when you're used up, back to the streets." The words hit harder than fists. Because part of Tommy had thought the same thing. Late at night, when the fear crept in. What if this was temporary? What if he disappointed them? What if he wasn't enough? "That's enough." Samuel's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stood in the doorway of the general store, arms full of supplies, eyes hard as stone. "You boys have business here, or you just making trouble?" Rick backed up, but slowly, deliberately. "No trouble, Mr. Thornton, just catching up with an old friend." "Uh-huh." Samuel moved to the wagon, setting down the supplies. "Tommy, get in!" Tommy climbed up, his hands shaking slightly. As they pulled away, he could feel Rake's eyes on his back, could hear the mocking laughter that followed them down the street. They rode in silence for a mile. Then finally, Samuel spoke. "What he said get to you?" Tommy stared at his hands. "Some. The part about using you, or the part about sending you back?" "Both, sir." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. The wagon creaked. The horse's hooves made a steady rhythm against the packed earth. "Can I tell you about Jacob?" Tommy nodded. "He was 17 when he came to us. His folks died of cholera. He was angry, bitter, convinced the world owed him something. Worked for us for 5 years. Good worker when he wanted to be. But he never believed in it. Never believed we actually cared. Always kept one foot out the door, waiting for the other shoe to drop." Samuel adjusted the reins. "When he left for California, you know what he said? He said he wished he'd trusted us sooner. Wished he'd believed he belonged, instead of wasting 5 years waiting to be kicked out." They crested a hill. The ranch spread out below them, golden in the afternoon light. "I can't make you believe anything, Tommy. That's not how belief works. You either trust that this is real, that Martha and I mean what we say, or you don't. But I'll tell you this once, and I won't say it again." Samuel looked at him, really looked at him with eyes that held no deception. "You're not hired help. You're not a project. You're a boy who needed a home and a ranch, that needed someone to care about it. That's all. Simple as that." Tommy felt his throat tighten. "What if I mess up?" "You will. Everyone does. I'll get mad. You'll get frustrated. That's life. But we don't throw people away because they're not perfect." Samuel smiled slightly. "If we did, Martha would have thrown me out 20 years ago." Something loosened in Tommy's chest. The fear didn't disappear completely. It probably never would. But it got smaller, more manageable. When they got back to the ranch, Martha had supper waiting. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy that could make a grown man weep. As Tommy ate, surrounded by the warm glow of lamplight and the quiet conversation of people who cared, he made a decision. He would believe, maybe not perfectly, maybe not without doubts, but he would try. He would trust that this was real, that he deserved it, that good things could last. And if they couldn't, if the world proved him wrong again, well, at least he'd have these moments, these meals, these people who saw a scrawny orphan boy and decided he was worth saving. That was more than most people got. That was everything. Thank you so much for joining us on Tommy's journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more emotional narratives from the Old West and beyond. Your support helps us bring you more stories of hope, redemption, and the power of human kindness. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this adventure together.